Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince and Other Writings. It has been quite nerdy, so I want to keep on digging into that gem. A lot of people talk about Machiavelli, but they don't really read him. It's kind of just a spooky name, so I always like to investigate things whenever there's a stigma around a certain person. So let's begin. Go ahead and listen to this as you are cleaning out your spice rack, making your bed, folding laundry, putting away laundry, whatever fun thing it is that you're doing. Nabis, prince of the Spartans, sustained a siege by the whole of Greece and by most victorious Roman army, and defended his city and his country against them. And when danger was near, he needed only to secure himself against a few of his subjects. But if the people had been hostile to him, this would not have been enough. So this is interesting. He just had a few people to guard against of his subjects, but he did recognize the fact that the people need to be on your side. Today, in America, I think we've really forgotten that. And let no one dispute this opinion of mine with that trite proverb that he who builds on the people builds on mud, because that is true when a private citizen lays his foundation on them and lets himself believe that the people would liberate him if he were oppressed by his enemies or by the magistrates. Okay, so that people would, that's interesting. So it's true when a private citizen builds upon the people, it is as mud. But when a person in a position of political authority does it, he actually secures himself. So we're looking at the macro versus the micro. In this case, he might often find himself deceived, as happened in Rome to the Gracchi. Remember the Gracchi brothers I covered? In Florence to Messer Giorgio Scali. But when it is a prince who builds his foundation on them, on the people that is, a prince who can command and is a man of courage, who is not dismayed in adversity and does not neglect other preparations, and who, with his own spirit and orders, keeps up the spirits of the entire people, he will never find himself deceived by them, and he will see that he has laid good foundations for himself. So here, I think you see a redeeming quality of Machiavelli, because he's saying that if you are a leader who has courage, you're not overcome with adversity, you're not dismayed by it, you don't neglect other duties, you're prepared, your spirit is so alive and well that you're able to keep up the spirits of the entire nation, the entire people around you, they won't deceive you, and you'll have good foundations laid for you. So you do see he's saying quite nice things about how a leader should treat the people and what that leader should expect from them. Usually, principalities of this sort are endangered when they are about to go from a civil government to an absolute one, because their princes either command by themselves. Okay, so principalities in danger when they go from a civil government to an absolute one. Wow, okay. Either because they command by themselves or by means of magistrates. Okay. So when it's absolute, they commanded themselves there, or the bureaucracy got them there, rather than the people, it seems is what he's getting at. In the later case, their position is weaker and more dangerous, because they depend completely on the will of those citizens who are appointed magistrates, and who can, especially in times of adversity, take their state from them with great ease, either by opposing them or by not obeying them. Aha. So in times of adversity, the magistrates can take one's estate quite easily by not obeying and opposing them. The prince has no time to seize absolute authority in times of danger, because the citizens and the subjects, who are accustomed to taking their orders from the magistrates, are not about to obey him in these difficulties. And in doubtful times, he will always find a scarcity of those he can trust. That is really true, isn't it? So it really kind of shows you the anxiety and the precariousness that these leaders are in. For such a prince cannot lay his foundations on what he sees in quiet times. That is very interesting. Don't lay your foundations on what you see during times of peace, quiet times. When the citizens have need of the state, because then everyone comes running. Everyone makes promises, and each one is willing to die for him when death is far away. That's interesting. Everyone's willing to die for him when death is far away. Are they willing to die for him when death is near? But in times of adversity, when the state has need of its citizens, then few of them are found. That's really true. They flee as refugees. They don't stay and fight. And this experience is all the more dangerous in that it can only be had once. And therefore, a wise prince must think of a way by which his subjects will always, and in all circumstances, have need of his state and of him, and then they will always be loyal to him. So, dependency, mutual respect, mutual love, that is quite a task there. So, you need your people to want you in times of war and in times of peace, to instill true loyalty in them. Wow. Very fascinating. Wow. Okay. We're in chapter 10. How the strength of all principalities should be measured. In examining the character of these principalities, it is necessary to consider another point, namely, whether a prince has so much power that he can, in case of need, stand on his own. So can a prince stand on his own, or whether he always needs the defense of others? And to make this part clear, I say that I judge those princes capable of standing on their own who have an abundance of men or of money. Okay. Who have an abundance of men or money. So you got soldiers, you got cash. You're going to have a little bit more leeway in order to do that, so that they can put together a sufficient army and fight a battle in the field against anyone who comes to attack them. And thus I judge those princes as always being in need of others who cannot take the field against their enemies. Okay, I judge those princes as always being in need of others. Well. But are obliged to seek refuge within their walls and defend them. So kind of not going out in the field, hiding behind the walls rather, kind of staying from a citadel position of strength. The first case has already been discussed, and in the future we will say whatever is needed about it. In the second case, nothing else can be said, except to encourage such princes to fortify and provision their own town. Okay, so look at that. They need to fortify themselves and make sure they have provisions. A starving population doesn't really stay loyal for long, do they? And walls that don't hold, irrigation that doesn't hold, towers that don't stand. It's going to be a problem, ain't it? And not to take any account of the countryside. And if someone has fortified his town well, and with regard to the governing of his subjects, has conducted himself as has been described above, and will be discussed below, he will always be attacked with great caution. Always be attacked with great caution. Now, when he says don't take account of the countryside, well, what about your food? If you're going to stay behind your walls, while your crops are being burned, that's going to be a huge problem. For men are always the enemies of undertakings whose difficulty is visible, nor can it ever appear easy to attack one whose town is strong, and who is not hated by the people. Now I can hear little kids is playing. Okay, I gotta go check on them. So notice this. For men are always the enemies of undertakings whose difficulty is visible, nor can it ever appear easy to attack one whose town is strong and who is not hated by the people. So if you're not hated by your people, you're not easy to dispose, not easy to have a coup. This is something that leaders should pay attention to actually be loved by the people, instead of leeching off our tax dollars and finding every way to piss on our heads. Very interesting. A strong town, so strong with infrastructure, as in also a healthy population. How you would measure it all. Very good. Very good. Okay, they're quiet now. We can go for a couple more minutes. The cities of Germany are completely free, have little surrounding countryside, and obey the emperor when they want to. And they do not fear him or any other neighboring power, because they are fortified in such a manner that everyone thinks their conquest must be tedious and difficult. Wow, that's interesting. For they all have the necessary moats. Okay, so moats are a very cool way of protecting your area, because you can't cross that water unless you have the drawbridge. And walls have sufficient artillery, always keep in public warehouses enough food and drink and fuel for a year. Yeah, having a good stockpile. And behind this, to keep the lower class fed. Okay, yeah, exactly. So they know to keep the people fed, maintain your walls, have a moat, have enough to have a year's supply of food. Very, very, very smart. And without loss to the public treasury, they always have a reserve enough to give them work for a year in those trades. Oh yeah, because if you can't pay people in the trades, they'll be outie. Today, it seems that there's a lot of looking down upon the people who are in the trades, which is quite sad. That are the new sinews of lifeblood of the city. So the trades are the sinews and lifeblood of the city. The sinews are the very strong, tissue. Whenever you're trying to cut some meat, the sinews are so strong, it's really strange. I don't know if you ever unfortunately, had to cut some of those off or cut around them or chew on them. Sinews are very tough. They really hold the meats together onto the bone and whatnot. So him describing the people who do trades as a sort of sinew and lifeblood of a city shows you how viable a city is with their economy going on and about. Very fascinating. And of the industries by means of which the lower classes feed themselves. Yes, so the people have to have industry. They have to have a way to earn and feed themselves. They also hold military exercises in high repute. And beyond this, they have many ordinances to maintain them. So they make sure that there's military exercises going on about, and they like that and they respect it. So you can see sort of masculinity going on here with such a nature. Women were not out in the field at this time. So you could see that they're maintaining their men very well. Very standing. So if you have abundance of men or money, you need to fortify and provision your town. You need to make sure that you have a way to feed the people, keep your economy afloat. Okay? And then you need to make sure that you find ways for your people to be loyal to you when there's strife and peace. So in all circumstances. Fascinating. I like how he said that a good prince is going to lay his foundations upon the people, and that you shouldn't lay your foundations in times of quiet, because it can be an illusion in a way. You need to make sure that you have more stability than that, because when the state is in need, you want your citizens to be around, not to all just be fleeing and leaving you because they despise you. Fascinating. He just talks a lot about adversity and what a prince should expect and who's going to try to ruin him, and how ambition should work and control. You need to maintain the friendship of the people, and that the people don't want to be oppressed. Oppressing them will make them hate you, and when the time comes, they'll toss you aside if they are able. And that if you become a civil government that turns into an absolute one by one's self-command or by the magistrates, and you disregard the people, that's going to be a problem. Because the opposition can come more easily, and their disobedience also more easily. An individual can build upon the people and it turns to mud when you're a private citizen, but when you're a leader, that's quite different. So he really seems to have a redeeming quality in that regard. I find that to be quite unique. What do you think? Do you agree with some of the things Machiavelli said? I find it to be really juicy in terms of how the state should run, how the relationship should be between the governor and the governed. Fascinating. If you'd like to join my blog, www.subscribestar.com/PelonArchive, I think you'll find it very niche and unique, and not too many annoying trolls or idiots. So there's that fun part. And I am able to post more longer things. And since I'm shadow banned on YouTube, it makes more sense to post longer things on the blog than on YouTube, where few people will see it, right? And where YouTube might likely remove it. Sometimes they remove my posts without alerting me, right? So on my own blog, it's going to be there for you. So take care and see you soon.